Okay, my dear children. Now, in the earlier parts, we discussed about the human nervous system and we discussed basic things related with the nervous system, right? So, in this session or in this chapter, we'll be discussing somewhat further information related to our nervous system. So, in here, we are mainly discussing about the nervous system. What are the things contained in nervous system, the main components, and what are the categories that we can identify in the nervous system, and so on. So first of all, let's see what is the topic given here under the nervous system part. So here, now in the earlier chapter you studied about the two types of coordination that occur within our body when you are responding to a certain stimuli or else a stimulus. Stimulus or stimuli means it's a type of a sense, right, that we obtain from our external environment. So according to that, we are going to provide a certain type of a reaction, okay, a certain type of a reaction. So in these cases, when we are providing reactions, our body organs should connect each other. They should communicate each other. So this communication process is the one which is referred as the coordination. So we divided the coordination process into two main categories as nervous coordination and endocrine coordination. So under those two categories, first of all, we are going to discuss about nervous coordination, right? First of all, we are going to discuss about the nervous coordination, my dear children. So if you take the nervous coordination here, mainly when coordinating or when communicating between the different organs in our body, nerves in our system or nerves in our body is going to help during the coordination process. So the coordination or the communication between different organs in the body with the help of nerves is referred as the nerves coordination. So my dear children, if you check the nervous coordination, right, nervous coordination is occurring or happening mainly through nerves, no? So here, first of all, a flow chart is given to identify the main types of nerves that contained within our body. So it's given that let us study about the human nervous system. So the major parts of the human nervous system is given below. Now here you can observe the different types of nerves that contain within your body. Okay. So if you take the nervous system, my dear children, we can divide this nervous system mainly into two main parts or two main categories. So here, the human nervous system, right, we can divide mainly into two main categories. First one is central nervous system and the next one is peripheral nervous system, right, peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system. These are the two main categories that we can identify under the nerves. Okay. So if you come to the central nervous system, right, central nervous system, we can divide the central nervous system once again into two main categories as the brain and the second one, the spinal cord. We can divide the central nervous system into two main categories as the spinal cord and the brain, right? The central nervous system, that's the heart of it. That's the core of the nervous system. So core of the nervous system, heart of the nervous system is consisting two major components. Those two components are those two components are the brain and the spinal cord. Brain and the spinal cord. These are the two main parts or the two main components contained in the central nervous system. Right. So the next one is the peripheral nervous system. If you take the peripheral nervous system, those are the simple nerves that runs through our body. Central nervous system is the core, which all the nerves are getting connected into, right? So these are the two main categories of the nervous system, central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So central nervous system can further classified into two main categories as brain and the spinal cord. So these are the main components that we can identify under the thing called nerves, right? So nerves are getting mainly controlled or mainly divided like into these parts only. Right, so let's see what are the other things contained. So my dear children, first of all, we are going to study about the central nervous system. Okay, first of all, we are going to study about the central nervous system. So in the central nervous system, there was two main parts or two main components. The first component was brain and the second one was the spinal cord. So we are going to study about the spinal cord and the brain in this session. Right, now let's see. The two main organs of the central nervous system are the brain and the spinal cord. So brain and the spinal cord are the two main organs that can be identified within the central nervous system, my dear children, right? Central nervous system means almost all the impulses, almost all the information are getting gathered to this place, right? Mainly to the brain. Okay, it's getting connected or it's coming mainly to the brain. And almost all the impulses, I mean like here impulses means the responses which are going towards the muscles and the organs are also coming through the core of the nervous system, which is referred as the central nervous system. So our brain acts as the main component or the main organ in the central nervous system. Spinal cord is the second main one, right? Spinal cord is the second main organ in under the central nervous system. So here it is given that the central nervous system is better protected in the body. So our central nervous system is well protected, right? It's well protected. Well protected means this is the most important system within our body, my dear children. If I'm going to say so, then it is correct. It's because that if these two systems, I mean if these two organs are not well protected, let's say that when you take these two organs, if they are getting affected very quickly, like our arms and legs, so during a major accident, there is a higher possibility that your brain or your spinal cord will not work at all. So in that kind of a situation, you won't be able to do your reactions. You won't be able to respond to a certain stimuli. You won't be able to move. You won't be able to even talk, communicate, move any kind of a muscle. It's because that all of these things are getting controlled. All of these things are getting managed by the central nervous system. Nerves are going to help in managing and controlling and in coordinating these organs. So it's really important to protect these two organs which is coming under the central nervous system. So our body naturally it's going to provide that protection for the brain and for the spinal cord. So you know that our brain is located within our skull. So skull is a bony material, right? It's made up with bony materials, right? So it's providing a very good protection. Skull is providing a great protection to the brain, right? And if you take the spinal cord is located inside the vertebral column. Inside the vertebral column, we can observe the spinal cord, my dear children. So spinal cord is protected by the vertebral column of an organism, especially in mammals, right? The spinal cord is protected by the vertebral column, right? So our skeleton system provides the protection needed for these organs, right? Protection needed for these organs. Especially if you take the brain is getting protected by the skull, while the vertebral column is going to provide the protection for the spinal cord, right? So here let's see what are the other things. The bones around the brain is known as the skull. Yes, the bone system around the brain. So, and there is a spinal made with bones, right? There is a spinal made with bones to protect the spinal cord, right? There is a spinal. This is the thing which is referred as the vertebral column. So, within the vertebral column, you could observe the spinal cord, right? Spinal systems, right? Our spine, right? Spine is the bone which is located at the middle of our back, right? At the middle of, if you keep your hand like this and you push your fingers like this, in these cases you can observe, see, these are the spine. This is our spine. So our spine can be touched like this, our spine. So the bone system which is located, right, the bone system which is located at the spine, right, is going to give a protection to the spinal cord. Within that bones, you could observe the spinal cord. So brain and the spinal cord both are getting protected by our skeletal system. Brain is getting protected by the skull, while the spinal cord is getting protected by the vertebral column or spines, right? The skull and the spinal column create a hard physical barrier to injuries. Now these two are giving out a wonderful protection. So if you take a physical injury, right, in order to have a brain damage or else a spinal cord damage, that physical damage should be a much larger one, right? Much larger means if you fall down from a chair, a table, if you fall down when you are running, in those kinds of cases you won't be able to get a certain damage to your brain or to your spinal cord, because your skull and the spine is providing a protection, so that during those types of physical damages you won't be having any issues with your brain or else the spinal cord. We should have a major accident in order to damage the brain or else the spinal cord. Major accident means like a road accident. Now if you climb a tree and when you fell down, like that kind of a situation, there is a possibility to have a spinal cord damage or else a brain damage. But however, it's providing a good protection. These bones, these structures, bone structures are providing a good protection for the two organs contained mainly under the central nervous system. Right then, so both the brain and the spinal cord are protected by layers of special connective tissues called meninges. So there are several tissue layers which are referred as meninges. So meninges are once again giving out a protection, right? Means that if you take the brain is like wrapped by a tissue layer which is referred as meninges, and also the spinal cord as well. Around the spinal cord also we could observe the tissue layer which is referred as the meninges. Next point, it's given the meninges are filled with a special fluid called cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid. So these meninges tissues are filled up with a special type of a fluid, a liquid, which is referred as the cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid, right? So cerebrospinal fluid can be found within the meninges in both the brain and the spinal cord, right? So see the protection, my dear children. First of all, in order to avoid from physical damages, the brain is protected by the skull and the spinal cord by the bones in it, spine bones in it, to avoid the physical damages, right? To avoid the physical damages, a good protective layer, right? A good protective shield is provided by the body. Then in the next stage, after passing the bony structures, there is a special tissue called the meninges, right? There's a protective tissue layer which is referred as meninges. It's going to cover the brain and the spinal cord as well, right? So once again, within these tissues, within these meninges, you could observe there is a special fluid which is referred as cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid, right? So these are also to give out a good protection to our body, to give out a good protection to brain and the spinal cord, meninges and the cerebrospinal fluid, right? So we'll move on with the next things to identify the uses and functions of those materials and those structures. Okay. So you are given with a question with 3 points. See, here we are discussing about the functions of cerebrospinal fluid. Functions of cerebrospinal fluid. So first thing is given here, it absorbs shocks. It can absorb shocks. Now let's imagine that a certain person is falling down. So in that process, you know that when that person is going to hit on the back, right? In that case, your back is getting vibrated. So to absorb those vibrations, there is meninges plus cerebrospinal fluid, right? Cerebrospinal fluid. Both of these things is going to provide a protection, right? Both of these things is going to provide a protection. Especially if you take cerebrospinal fluid, it's a fluid which is filled between the cavity of central nervous system or else brain and the spinal cord plus their protective measures or the physical structures, skull and the spines. Okay. So if you take this cerebrospinal fluid, it can absorb shocks and jerks, right? So when something is vibrating, when something is falling down, those shocks can be absorbed by the cerebrospinal fluid, right? So my dear children, it helps to protect the brain plus the spinal cord from being physically damaged. Okay, so next one, it supply nutrients. So the second one is all the substances, necessary nutrient substances are getting dissolved within the cerebrospinal fluid and it's been provided to the central nervous system. So to nourish the central nervous system, to supply nutrients to the central nervous system, cerebrospinal fluids are important. Okay, right. It prevents the central nervous system from microbial infections. It prevents from microbial infections. So if you take the meningin tissue layer, now within the meningin tissue layer, you can observe the cerebrospinal fluid. So if you take the meningin cell layer or the tissue layer, if a certain thing is covered by a certain tissue layer, then let's imagine that a microbe is coming towards this pen now. Now this is the meningins layer covered, which is covering the central nervous system. The pen is the central nervous system. Okay. So if a microbe is going to come, then first of all he is going to enter to the meningin cells. So he is going to destroy whatever the surface, then it should have to travel beneath it to find the central nervous system. So first of all, it's providing a good protection, right? It provides a protection to the central nervous system mainly. If microbes are getting attracted or if microbes are getting entered to the central nervous system, they can't enter directly. They should go through the meningin tissues plus the cerebrospinal fluid to reach the spinal cord or the brain. So it is providing a protective measure for these two organs. Right, so these are the uses of meningin tissues and the cerebrospinal fluid present in them. Right then. So my dear children, you are given with the central nervous system, the figure of a central nervous system. Now within this figure you can observe the main parts related to the central nervous system, right? So if you take the central nervous system, the first and foremost important part is the brain. So brain is consisting three main parts as the cerebrum, cerebellum and the medulla oblongata. Actually the oblongata part is not given here, but so that's the starting position of the spinal cord, medulla, right? So we can divide the brain into three main parts as the cerebrum, cerebellum and the medulla. So these are the three main parts which we can observe within a brain, right? Under the central nervous system, one organ that we come across is the brain. So brain can be further divided into three main parts as cerebrum, cerebellum and the medulla. Then you can observe the spinal cord here and the spinal column. Spinal column means these are the spinal column, spines in simple, right? Spinal columns or spines. The vertebral column is also located like this, right? To be at the either side the skeletal system. So the spines or the spine bones are going to help to protect the spinal cord, like in the figure which is given in here. Okay my dear children, so this is just a figure now. This is just a figure to identify the main parts contained in the central nervous system. So like in the previous chapters, let us move on with that special 3D structure, right? Let us move on with that 3D structure, 3D simulation in order to identify the main parts contained in the central nervous system. So it would give us a more idea about their location and their nature. So let's head on to see that special structure, the simulation of the central nervous system under a 3D figure. Okay my dear children, now here you can observe within my background, you can observe that 3D image of the central nervous system. So now first I'm going to use this thing and I'm going to show that the structure. Let's enlarge it somewhat. So, okay, now here within this structure, so this is the part which is referred as the skull. So here you can observe this is the skull. It's a bony material, my dear children, made up with a bony material. See, skull, right? So skull is like this, right? This is the skull. Okay, now I'm going to select the skull. You can see that the brain is located within the skull. So I'm going to select these skull parts and I'm going to fade these things so that you can see the brain quite well, like this, right? So children, now you could observe the three main categories contained in the brain, right? So this part of the brain, see, this part of the brain is referred as the cerebrum. So this is the part of the brain which referred as the cerebrum. So here you can observe cerebrum has a convoluted tissues. Cerebrum has convoluted tissues. See, convoluted means these things are getting folded each other, right? See, these things are convoluted each other, fold one another, right? Cerebrum. So this area, this region, the larger region of the brain is considered as the cerebrum. Cerebrum, right? So this is the cerebrum, right? Cerebrum. Okay. So after that, this underneath the cerebrum, you can observe the second main important part of the brain just beneath the cerebrum, under the starting position. Now here, when in these areas you can observe the second main part of the brain. This is called as the cerebellum. This region, this area is referred as the cerebellum. Cerebellum, right? So cerebellum of the brain, right? Cerebellum. These areas are the cerebellum. See, cerebellum, the second most important area of the brain. Then finally you could observe, right? You could observe the spinal cord, right? So I'm going to remove these excess parts. You can see that it is getting well protected, right? It's getting well protected. See, this is the bony structure. So these are the ones which are referred as the spines. See, these are the spines. So spines are spine is protecting the spinal cord well. So I'm going to remove now. I'm going to remove all of these spines one by one each, so that you can see the spinal cord well. Right? See how many spines are there? There are several spines. You can see them. Okay, now I'm going to select these parts. Right, and I'm going to hide them as well. See, so I'm going to select all of these spines and their components so that I could show you the spinal cord. Okay, right, now this is the spinal cord, my dear children. When you remove the spines, you can see the spinal cord. See, this is the spinal cord. So let's remove these parts as well. See, this is the spinal cord, right? So you can see the spinal cord in here. This part is referred as the spinal cord, my dear children. So see, to get the spinal cord, see how much of layers did I remove from this figure. So we removed several areas, several layers. That's how the that's how it's been protected well within our body. So because it is the central nervous system within the body. So that's why it is being well protected. So my dear children, this is referred as the spinal cord. Right, spinal cord. Okay. So just the starting position of the spinal cord, this starting position is the area which is referred as the medulla, right? So the starting position of the spinal cord is referred as the medulla, right? This starting position, this portion is the one which is referred as the medulla. So here now you can observe the three main most important parts of the brain and the spinal cord. So here in the brain there are three categories: the convoluted area, the largest area of the brain which is referred as the cerebrum. Then my dear children, this one, this here, see this area which is in somewhat red color and that has fibers. So this area is referred as the cerebellum, and the area which is going to start the right spinal cord is referred as the medulla, right? So these are the three areas in our brain, right? In our brain we could observe these three areas. So now I'm going to show you the spinal cord. So this is the spinal cord which runs through the spine or the vertebral column, through the vertebral column. So this is the spinal cord then. So spinal cord is connected directly to the brain, as you can see in the simulation, right? So this is the structure and the components that we can identify in our brain, my dear children, right? So once again we'll head on to the classroom and we'll identify their functions and the specialties in each of these parts. Okay, my dear children, now we discussed about the structure by using that simulation about the central nervous system, right? We discussed about the structure of the central nervous system by using that 3D simulation, right? So now here in this figure you can observe the the central nervous system, the main components contained in the central nervous system. So we divided the central nervous system into two main categories, like in the earlier parts. I think you could remember. So we divided the central nervous system into two main categories as the brain and the spinal cord. So brain contains three categories: cerebrum, cerebellum, and the medulla, right? By using the simulation, we studied the location and we identified their key components, right? So these are the three main categories that we can observe in our brain within the central nervous system. So my dear children, if you move on with the next thing, so I'm going to take the slide somewhat up so that I could show you the arrangement of these. So if you take this one as our brain, right? We assume that this one as our brain, right? This is the cerebrum. This area is the cerebellum. And finally, this area which the spinal cord is going to start is referred as the medulla, right? Medulla. So these are the three main parts that we can observe within the structure of the brain, right? So starting part of the spinal cord is referred as the medulla. The largest area or the largest part is the cerebrum. You can observe that it had a convoluted shape. I mean, like the tissues contained within the cerebrum is convoluted each other, fold one on each other like this. Okay, it's like this, convoluted. Okay, cerebrum. So beneath the cerebrum you could observe the cerebellum part, and after that the medulla. So these are the three main parts contained in the brain. Then it runs through, right? Then it runs through like this to form the spinal cord. Spinal cord. So these are the main parts contained in our, right, central nervous system. Actually there are four main parts: spinal cord, medulla, cerebellum and cerebrum. Okay, so cerebrum, cerebellum and medulla contained within the brain, while the spinal cord runs through the vertebral column or the spine, right? So these are the key components that we can identify within the central nervous system. Okay, my dear children, then you are given with the functions. So here now we are going to identify the functions of each part of the central nervous system, right? So the functions. First of all, it is given the cerebrum or the cortex of the brain. Cerebrum or the cortex of the brain. It controls the higher brain functions such as the thought and intelligence. So thinking ability, logical thinking ability, like this way. How to do a math problem, how to addition and how to do the calculation, how to get a division. Then when I'm teaching, you guys are studying. So some intelligent people, right? Some intelligent people will get my ideas very soon rather than the others. It's because their intelligence, their cortex, their cerebrum is way more advanced than the other people, right? So the intelligence, logical thinking Logical thinking means, now let's imagine that a dog is coming towards you. What will you do? Definitely you will run, or else you will take a stone or piece of some kind of a stick or any other, and you will hit the dog and you walk away from the situation. So that thinking process, that is just a simple example. Logical thinking is way more, far more different than that. I mean, like, it's a very simple idea. That's also can be considered as a logical thinking process, but however, it's very preliminary, it is in very preliminary level, right? So basically, when to take some ideas, I mean, like, to take some decisions, we need the logical thinking process. So all of these activities is getting controlled or managed by our cerebrum or the cortex of the brain, right? So all the things which you are going to learn, all the things that you are going to study is getting stored within the cortex or the cerebrum of the brain, right? So here controls higher brain functions such as thought and in the intelligence and also logical thinking. Then after that, recognition of the sensors. So recognition of the sensors like this. Now you are being asked to close your eyes like this, and you are given with several substances. We'll say that one is water, one is salt, right? Let's see, let's say that these two are solutions. So you are being asked to close your eyes and you are being asked to taste these two solutions. You could see that, or when you are drinking or when you are tasting these substances, you could clearly get a sense that one is salt solution because it is salty, one is water because it doesn't carry any kind of a taste. How can you say that the salt taste is salty? What's the meaning of it? What's the meaning of it actually? What do you mean by the salt taste, salty taste? Children, it's the sensation given by our tongue, right? Salty means it is a sensation, it is a sense which is captured by our tongue, and that sense is given to the brain to process and to identify like what kind of a taste is it. So your brain is the one which is responsible in identifying the taste. So your brain is giving once again, right, is going to process the data obtained from the tongue and give out a certain output. So that output is the salty taste. Let's say like this. If your brain is not functioning well with the tongue, can you feel the taste? Of course you can't. No matter what do you eat, you won't be able to feel any taste. It's because that the nerves or the whatever the or nerves or the things which is going to regulate the tongue and to get the necessary information, and these things are being sent to our brain. Brain is going to process that data and to provide you with a taste. Brain is the one which is providing the taste for you guys. It's not the tongue. Tongue is just capturing the taste. These taste sensors. These sensors are given by our brain. So where do these tastes are being stored? Simply, it's like this. Okay. When I'm going to eat a salty substance, our tongue is capturing that sensors and sending that to the brain. So brain is going to process and calculate and to find out this is the taste. So where can I find this taste? So like that way, he is going to check with the brain. Actually, the cortex of the brain is going to check whether the taste is being stored in the brain or not. If it is not, then the brain is storing that taste as a different column, like in saving a file in the computer. It is same as that. So your brain is going to save that taste within your cortex. Okay. So on a different day, when you are going to eat the same thing, your brain now knows what that taste is. It's like this. In a computer, let's say you are going to save a file. Let's say it's a favorite movie. You are going to save that movie in local disk D, new folder. Now you know the location of the movie. So after a week, when you are going to check the computer, you are going for the movie, then you are taking computer, you are double clicking on it, then you are going for the local disk D, you are opening it, then you are going for the new folder and you are opening it there. Right? So by that day you can find the location. Like in the same way, each and every taste, each and every smell, each and every sound that you can hear is stored in your cortex or the brain. When needed, those information can be extracted and given to you to process or to deal with the certain situation. So that's how our brain works. So my dear children, all of these stuffs, all of these information is getting stored within the cortex of the brain. Right then, controls the movements of muscles with intent to perform a specific action. So it controls the movement of the muscles with the intent, right? With the intent to perform a specific action, right? With the intent to perform a specific action. It's like this. Now this is my arm. If I want to move my arm, my brain is giving out a signal, raise the arm. Like this. So these signals are being sent from the cerebrum. Cerebrum is going to send the signals to my arm. Then arm is raising my hand. This is how the cerebrum is going to behave, this is how it's going to act. It can control our voluntary muscle actions. Voluntary muscles means the muscles that we can move by thinking, right? By thinking, the muscles that we can move. So our facial muscles, like this, see? Facial muscles, right? Muscles in our arms, see? Then muscles in our body, some muscles like this, okay? Muscles in our neck. So these muscles, we can think and we can move. So if I want to shake my head, see? If I want to stop it, then like this. So my dear children, all of these things, even the legs also, the same thing. All of these muscle movements, voluntary muscle movements, voluntary muscles means the muscles that we can think and work with. Muscles that we can think and control with. So those muscles are called as voluntary muscles. So voluntary muscle movements are being controlled by the cortex or the cerebrum. Then you are given with the second part, right? Second one is the cerebellum. So cerebellum is going to regulate and coordinate the body balance, right? It's going to regulate and coordinate the body balance of a certain organism, so of a certain mammal actually. So if you take a drunk person, you know that drunk person can't walk straight. Why is that? Because the cerebellum, the information carried out by the cerebellum is getting affected due to alcohol. So therefore they won't be able to walk straight, because your body balance is being maintained by the cerebellum. And if you take a bird, right? Let's take a bird who is having a trouble in its cerebellum. So even though the bird can shake the wings, it won't be able to fly. It's because that in order to fly, body balance is really important. So if there is no balance, then the bird can't fly. So my dear children, to control the body balance, cerebellum is really important. Cerebellum is going to maintain the body balance. Then the next one, medulla. So mainly medulla is going to control, automatic functions. These are called as non-voluntary functions. Voluntary means we can think and control. So non-voluntary means we can't control those actions at all. Like sneezing, vomiting, rate of aeration of lungs, rate of heartbeat. Those kinds of stuff or those kinds of things cannot be controlled by thinking. We can't control those things. However, they should be managed and controlled. So medulla helps to control those non-voluntary actions like sneezing, vomiting, rate of aeration of lungs, right? Then rate of respiration, like that way. So those things being controlled by the medulla. Non-voluntary actions. Next one, spinal cord. So you know that spinal cord is the connection between brain and all the other parts of the body. So my dear children, spinal cord helps to relay messages from the brain to different parts of the body. So it's going to help to transport these signals towards each and every direction of the body. So my dear children, these are the special functions of cerebrum, cerebellum and the medulla and plus the spinal cord, right? Very special functions. They are going to carry out different functions within our body, right? So these are those special functions carried out by the central nervous system in our body, right then. So next we'll be discussing about, we discussed about the central nervous system. Now we are going to discuss about the peripheral nervous system. So peripheral nervous system is the nervous system or the nerves which are going to rise from brain or else from the spinal cord. So here peripheral nervous system can be divided mainly into two main parts as cranial nerves. Cranial nerves. Cranial nerves means here within the figure you can see that these nerves are arising from the brain. So the two main parts of the nerve system, peripheral nervous system, is that number one is the cranial nerves and the second one is the spinal nerves. Cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. So spinal nerves are the nerves which are arising from the spinal cord. Those nerves are not getting connected with the brain. So spinal nerves, these all are spinal nerves. So these are called as the cranial nerves. Cranial nerves are arising from the brain while spinal nerves are arising from the spinal column. So the peripheral nervous system is getting divided into two main categories as cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Right, so let's see. All the nerves that lie outside the spinal cord and the brain are known as peripheral nervous system. So peripheral nervous system is the nerves which is located within the body, apart from the spinal cord and the brain. The nerves that lead directly from the brain are called cranial nerves. So like that way in the earlier case, right, I showed you by using the figure given here. The cranial nerves are the nerves which are arising from the brain. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves. So my dear children, there are 12 pairs of cranial nerves, right? 12 pairs means altogether there are 24 nerves, cranial nerves. Altogether there are 24 cranial nerves, right? So there are 24 cranial nerves which are arising from the brain. Cranial nerves, how many are there? 12 pairs or 24 nerves. The nerves that arise from the spinal cord are called as spinal nerves. So like that, like in the previous case we discussed that thing. The nerves which are arising from the spinal cord are referred as spinal nerves. So in humans there are 31 pairs. So there are 12 pairs of cranial nerves, there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So altogether there are 62 nerves, right? 62 nerves which are arising from the spinal cord. 24 nerves are arising from the brain. 62 nerves are arising from the spinal cord. 12 pairs of nerves are arising from the brain, while 31 pairs, 62 means that in total. So 31 pairs arising from the spinal cord, while 12 pairs or 24 nerves arising from the brain. Nerves which are arising from the brain are called as cranial nerves, while the nerves which are arising from the spinal cord are referred as spinal nerves, my dear children. Okay then, so these are the nervous system, peripheral nervous system. So there are two main categories under the peripheral nervous system. Number one is the cranial nerves and the second one is the spinal nerves. Right then, so let's see what are the other things contained within the lesson. So my dear children, we are studying about the peripheral nervous system and we divided the peripheral nervous system into cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. So these are the two main parts of nerves that we can observe inside our peripheral nervous system. So here you know that there are 12 pairs, 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves. 31 pairs of spinal nerves and 12 pairs of cranial nerves can be observed within the peripheral nervous system. Right then, my dear children, let's move on to observe the peripheral nervous system by using that human anatomy simulation. So let's head on to observe this peripheral nervous system. Okay, my dear children, now here you can observe a figure, right? A 3D figure that shows the nerves in our body. Actually, in the half of the body, you can observe the nerves in this figure. So I'm going to zoom in this thing and let's see. Right? So this is how the nerves runs through our body. See, nerves are running here and there all around our body. You can see it in here more clearly, right? See, so the nerves which are arising at here are the cranial nerves, and once again, see, the nerves which are connected in here, which runs through the brain, are the cranial nerves, and these are the nerves which are running from the spinal cord. So these nerves are referred as the spinal nerves, my dear children. So here you could observe this one, the spinal cord. So the nerves, these nerves are rising from the spinal cord, right? So these nerves are the ones which are referred as the spinal nerves, right? spinal nerves. Here you can observe the spinal nerves. See these nerves. Right. So the cranial nerves can be observed if you check the system like this. So these are the cranial nerves that runs through the brain. Okay. So here there are some cranial nerves which connects our eye as well. So these are the peripheral nervous system, cranial nerves plus the spinal nerves contained in our system, right, nervous system. So here you can observe more clearer image when you are looking at the simulation, 3D simulation of the human body anatomy. Right then, so I kept the organs as well so that you can get a good idea about the parts. So here these are the nerves, right? These are the nerves that can be identified. Spinal cord, spinal nerves, these ones, spinal nerves. So the brain and these areas you can observe cranial nerves. Right, my dear children. Now these are the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves that we can observe, right? Okay then. So right, so here you can observe a good view, the front view, right? Right, so cranial nerves and the spinal nerves, my dear children. So once again, let's head on to the classroom and let's see what are the other things contained in the lesson part. Okay, my dear children, so we studied about the peripheral nervous system and we identified the peripheral nerves. We identified about the spinal nerves and cranial nerves even by using that 3D simulation. So now we are about to discuss the functions carried out by the peripheral nervous system, right? So you are given with a topic, functions of peripheral nervous system. So the main function of peripheral nervous system, my dear children, is given transmitting impulses from receptors to the central nervous system. Transmitting impulses, right? Transmitting impulses from receptors to the central nervous system. Now, if you take the central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. In order to process data, these data should be provided to the brain, right? So, the sensors which are obtained from the receptors is getting transferred into the central nervous system or to the brain or to the spinal cord by using the nerves within our body, right? So let's imagine like this. When I'm going to walk, a thorn is going to pick on my leg. So that pain sense is getting transformed or it is getting transported. That pain sensors, it is getting transported from my leg to the spinal cord, then to the brain. That's how the pain sense is going to transmit. So during this transportation process, in order to transmit these impulses means whatever the sense which are getting captured by the sensory organs, impulses. So these impulses are getting transported to our brain through the nerves in our peripheral nervous system. So peripheral nervous system mainly helps to carry information to the brain which are getting obtained or received by the receptors, right? The information received from the receptors is getting transported to the brain by central nervous system. Then the next one, the opposite of this thing, what? Transmitting impulses from central nervous system to the effectors. Now, when I'm going to walk, when a thorn is going to pick on my leg. I'm going to move my leg away and I'm going to take off that throne. Right? So first of all, the information, the pain information, pain impulses is getting transmitted to my brain through central nervous system. Once again, the information or the reaction impulses is getting transported to the necessary places, like I need to take my leg up like this, then I am going to remove the throne and take it away from the leg. So those information are referred as impulses. So these impulses are also given by the brain. Take the arm, go for the leg, find out the throne, remove it, walk now. These informations are also given by the brain. But my dear children, specialty is that these information given to the muscles or to the necessary organ, like in order to remove the throne, our hand should work. So hand should go to the necessary place in the leg. So we have to move our hand. So those muscle movements, in order to control the muscle movements, impulses should be given. So those impulses are being transported to the necessary organs by using the peripheral nervous system. So peripheral nervous system mainly helps in two different ways. Number one, carry impulses, right? Carry impulses from receptors to the brain. Receptors means sensory organs. Second one is carry information or impulses from brain to the effectors or to the muscles when you are giving out a certain response. So those are the two main functions given out by the peripheral nervous system. Right. So here special thing is given. An electrical signal that travels along a nerve is called an impulse. So my dear children, in the earlier lessons, right? In the earlier lesson, I told you that in a human body, some amount of electricity is getting generated. That electricity is actually generated due to impulses. These informations which are running here and there through the nerves. All of these things, all of these information, all of these commands, all of these sensors, all of these data is going here and there through our nerves as an electrical signal, right? So it's providing electricity as well, right? So if you take our human body can actually light up a small bit of a light bulb through the impulses which are acting within a day, right? So electrical signals are the ones which are running through our nerves as impulses. Finally, when they are going to for the necessary places, they are being converted into necessary information type. The transmission process is happening as an electrical signal, right? It's like this. This is our brain. The signal is going to my hand to raise my hand. So that signal which is going to run from the brain to my arm through the nerves is running as an electrical signal like this. Okay, it is running through an electrical signal. So that electrical signal is getting identified by the arm and it is being decoded into information, raise arm. Okay, it's same as in a television. Now in a television, when you are going to operate the television, okay, the broadcasting station is going to provide some sort of a signal as a wave. So that wave is coming to your antenna Antenna is going to provide the wave into the television, so that the television can finally convert those information into images and sound. So if the television is the brain, then your antenna is the arm. They have a good connection. Antenna is going to provide the necessary information from the outside to the TV. TV is also transmitting signals to the antenna. So there is an unknown understanding. In the same way, our brain and our arms or muscles, they have a mutual understanding, right? Whatever the signal that sends through our brain to our arm, right? Our arm can decode it and convert into signals and convert into information, right? The electrical signals which runs through the nervous system is coming to our those information coming to our arm, and our arm can decode those information into necessary commands. So by that way, their hand is raised, right? So the impulses which are carrying from our arm to the brain, like the sensors like this, touches, pain, heat sensors, pressure sensors like this, pressures, these information are being sent to the brain by the central nervous system as electrical signals. So brain has that ability to decode those electrical signals and to identify this particular impulse as a pressure, or else a heat or temperature change, or else a touch. So like that way, arm and our brain has a mutual understanding. Not the arm, but all the organs within our body with the brain, they have a certain relationship. Right, my dear children? So all the information is carried out through the nerves as impulses. When you take these impulses are mainly electrical signals. These are electrical signals. Okay then. Okay, my dear children, now you are given with an activity. Okay. Now in this activity, right, we are going to study about the rate of transmission of impulses by a nerve. Right, rate of transmission of impulses by a nerve. So to conduct this activity, you will be needing a ruler. Right, if it is a meter ruler, then it would be great. Right, if it is a meter ruler, then it would be great. So we need a meter ruler. Okay, here we need a meter ruler. Right, so this is the only material that we need. Okay, this is the only material that we need, a meter ruler. Now let's see how to conduct this activity. Method, it's really simple. Let's imagine that this is my meter ruler. So I'm going to hang it. Okay, I'm going to hold it like this at the 0, and I'm going to release and catch it. Okay, what do you have to do? Keep it like this, release and catch it like this, release and catch it, try to catch it. See, now this is the first case, release and catch, and check how much is the scale, how much is the distance, okay, at the first time. Then take another one, another time, release and catch it, check how much is the scale. Like that way for several times. What you have to do, you release and catch it. Okay, you take the meter ruler, hold it from 0, release the meter ruler and catch it at the same instance. Check how much is the scale. Okay, repeat this several times and get several observations, right? If you want, my dear children, you can use a friend of yours, several friends of yours, to check their rate of impulses. So by that way we can check how much is the rate of impulse. We are releasing this thing means like this, we are releasing this thing means, right? Here we are giving out a certain information very quickly, release. Then once again we are catching it. So once again we are giving out another signal like in a very short time, like in a flash. We are giving the two information very quickly to our hand. So according to that, hand is going to react. During the reaction, you know that some amount of time is getting passed. So therefore, according to that time, the ruler or the meter ruler is going to fall some kind of a distance downward. So the instance which has the lowest reading, at that time the rate of impulses traveling through the nerves is very high. Okay, at the instance where you got the highest scale, I mean the greatest distance, at that time the rate of impulses traveling through the nerves is very less. The rate is somewhat less. That's why the scale is getting increased. Right then, so this is how to conduct the activity, my dear children. It's just a simple activity. You can find several students in your home, in your village area, or else when you go to school. You can find out your several students and you can conduct this activity and check whether all the students in your classroom has got the same nerve speed or same impulse rate or not. So by that way you can come into a conclusion, right, that all of these readings will not be same or will not be similar. Therefore, rate of transmitting impulses from person to person is changed, or from instance to instance it is getting changed, right? So like that way we can come into a small conclusion. So let's write down the method, my dear children, how to conduct the activity. So first what you have to do, take the ruler and hold it from 0 and release quickly grab the ruler and check the distance traveled by the ruler. Distance traveled by the ruler. So this is how to do. Take the ruler and hold it from 0. We have to take the ruler and hold it from 0 and release we have to release it. Then after that, quickly grab the ruler and check the distance traveled by the ruler, right? So this is by 0 we have to hold it, then we have to release it and capture it once again, and we have to check how much is the distance that traveled by the ruler. Then we have to repeat these steps several times, or else you have to assign a different student or else your friend and to get several readings. Okay, so in the next step we can write like this: repeat above with several people or in different instances and obtain several readings from the ruler. Right, so this is the way of doing the activity, my dear children. Once again, first of all, you have to take the ruler and hold it from 0 and release. And release. Quickly grab the ruler and check the distance traveled by the ruler. Okay. Then after that, repeat above with several people or in different instances and obtain several readings from the ruler. So this is how to do the activity. It's really simple, right? Even you can do it at your home. You just need the ruler. Take your siblings. If you don't have any siblings, then you can get the help of your mother and father, right? And you can repeat the activity several times to get several readings and observe whether the rate of transmission of impulses from instance to instance or from one person to another is going to change or not. So by that way we can come into a conclusion. What happens when impulses are transmitting through our nerves? Right, so I hope that you may do this experiment at your home or school or any other place, and you will get to know what will happen during the transmitting of impulses in our nerve system. So you know that even I have done it several times by using the pen, right? You could observe that in each of the instances, the scale which the pen is going to move down is going to differ. So by that way, we can finally conclude that, my dear children, the rate of transmission of impulses from person to person, from instance to instance is getting changed, right? Okay, so we'll write down our conclusion and our observation here. So our observation was quite simple. Different readings were obtained during the activity. Reason for this is rate of transmitting impulses change impulses through nerves. Rate of transmitting impulses through nerves change from person to person time to time. So from time to time and from person to person, the rate of transmission of impulses through the nerves is going to change. That's why in different occasions, by using different people, we can get different distances or different readings in this experiment. Right, my dear children? So this is the activity and this is our observation and conclusion. So let's move on with the other things with our lesson. So you will notice that each student get different readings. The dropping of the ruler is recepted from the eyes. The message is transmitted to the brain and it is returned to the effector, the muscles of the right hand, then the right hand responses. According to the results of the activity, the speed of impulses differ from each person. The most important part of our body are the brain and spinal cord. So it is very important to take necessary protective measures in day-to-day activities since the nervous system is very fragile. So this is the explanation once again for the activity, my dear children. So I have explained this thing earlier, right? Check the last point. The most important part of our body are the brain and the spinal cord. I told you this thing earlier. The most important part in our body. That's why it has huge protection. So it is very important to take necessary protective measures in day-to-day activities since nervous system is very fragile, because nerves are very fragile. So therefore we need to be very careful with our nerves, right, and our central nervous system. So it's really important, right, it's very important, my dear children, to have a good healthy nervous system. So let's discuss what are the protective measures for a healthy nervous system, right? So let's discuss what are the protective measures that we need to follow to have a healthy nervous system, right? Maintaining a balanced nutrition from childhood. It is really important, no? We have to maintain a balanced and healthy and a good diet from our childhood. It helps to grow our muscles, receptors and the nerves, and it also helps to carry impulses at a greater rate, right? Okay. Prevent children facing accidents. That's also a one most important one, because children are the ones who are growing very fast. Okay, so my dear children, if the children are going to face towards accidents, then their growth rate is getting reduced, and also there is a risk in damaging the spinal cord or to the brain, as in the childhood these things are very fragile, easily can be broken. Strength, they are not that much strength, they don't have that much strength. So therefore it's important to, right, it's very important to keep children out of accidents. We have to protect children out of accidents. Next one, during pregnancy mothers should get proper nourishment considering the baby's physical and mental development. So you know that during the pregnancy time period, most of the times the doctors are going to give different kinds of vitamins and medication for the mother. It's for the baby. It's for the development of the baby, right? So these vitamins, minerals and these nourishments are very important for the development of the baby and to have a good nervous system, a good healthy nervous system since the fetal age, right? So a good medication with necessary vitamins and necessary minerals we have to provide to the pregnant mothers, okay, right? Then the next one, be sure to get the correct posture during sports exercises in daily life and lifting a burden to force. So if there is a burden to be lifted, we have to use a correct posture. So these are the postures. So this is wrong, because when you are lifting a burden, a weight, by using this method, all the forces is getting applied to your backside like this, so it's difficult to carry out. And also you may get hurt when you lift like this, right? There's a possibility in getting hurt. Your back or your spinal cord, your spine will get hurt if you lift a burden or else a weight like this. So the best method to lift is like this. Bend down and lift it. Don't give much force to the backbone. Okay? Right. Control mental stress. You know that it helps to have a good blood pressure. Good blood pressure means nerves are getting protected. Right? Next one. Avoid excessive keeping awake and sleepless. So my dear children, it's really important to have a good sleep. Okay? At least like we have to have 8 hours of sleep within a day. Okay? We need to have that kind of a rest for a day. It helps to have a good brain. Good brain means here, it helps to relax the brain and our body plus the nerves inside it. Engage in intelligence development activities. So we need to engage in intelligence development activities like sports in chess. Chess is a good sport that can develop logical thinking and intelligence activities, right? Then reading encyclopedia and those kind of stuff. Then after that you can check practicing puzzles. Like those kinds of activities, they would increase your intelligence and logical thinking. So it would help us to maintain a good and a well healthy brain. Okay, so always we have to get some more work from our brain. We don't need to give too much of a push to the brain, but up to a certain extent we have to get some work, right? Okay, then the next one, in an accident there is a more possibility for spinal cord injuries. Never move anyone who you think have a spinal injury unless it is very necessary. Keep the person absolutely still and safe. Do not allow the body to bend or twist. Keep the person on a wooden flat surface and rush to the nearest hospital. So in an accident, there is more possibility of spinal cord injuries. So during an accident, there is a huge possibility to have a spinal cord injuries, because our spines are going to break down during a major accident. So those pieces will get inserted into the spinal cord, and sometimes spinal cord also get broken down with the spines. So these things are happening during a major accident. Okay, so if you take a major accident, so let's imagine that that kind of an accident has happened. So in that case, what you have to do, we should never move anyone who you think have a injury unless it is very necessary. Okay, if you think that this person which has got an accident, if you think that he is having a spinal injury, then don't move that person unless it is very necessary. Then keep the person absolutely still and safe. So you have to keep the person absolutely still and safe. That's the first and foremost thing to do, right? If there is a backbone injury, spinal cord injury. Okay. Then do not allow the body to bend or twist. Don't allow that body to bend or twist. Okay. Then after that, keep the person on a wooden flat surface. You have to keep the person on a wooden flat surface, and we have to bring that, or we have to take that person to the nearest hospital as as quick as you can. Okay. So remember, these are really important factors, or these are really important tips when you are if you want to have a good, healthy nervous system and a brain. So my dear children, this wraps up about the things with the central nervous system and our peripheral nervous system. So we discussed the nervous system and the nervous coordination and the stimulus, impulses, and all of these things. I hope that you got a good knowledge about the nervous system. So my dear children, in the next chapter, we'll be discussing the final part related to our lesson, and we'll be discussing about the skin, human skin, in our next chapter. So until we are going to meet you on the next chapter, it's time to say goodbye.